people who live in small towns, what's the story everyone knows but no one likes talking about?
In my town we had the mayor's daughter drive drunk through a pizza place and get out of the car and walk up to the counter and write an order. It was on the news for like one day and then disappeared completely. The place just opened back up.
The superintendent of my hometown school district got a DUI in a school zone and used his wealth and influence in the community to not only get out of jail time, but to get the arrest completely scrubbed from his criminal record. He's sued multiple people for slander for mentioning it publicly because, as far as the official record is concerned, it never happened.
There's a dungeon under the abandoned yellow house in the park that was used by the current owner's great-grandfather. He admitted on his deathbed that he was the cause of 13 disappearances from the 1910s to the 1930s. Issue is, we don't know who the 13 victims are since the surrounding area has had hundreds of disappearances over the decades and we have nothing to go off of except a period of nearly 30 years. Plus, no one wants to think about a relative or ancestor being locked up in there. A gazebo was removed from the town green because it became a place late at night where people were regularly caught having sex. It was a beautiful gazebo, with comfortable benches, like church pews, where people could relax in the warm weather and enjoy the town green. But no more.
There's a statue of a volunteer firefighter at the corner of the village's busiest intersection. He was memorialized for being selfless and being the embodiment of being a good neighbor. Nobody ever talks about though that when he was alive they called him Richie the Retard. About 3 years ago a young lesbian couple came up missing. They found their car half submerged in the river but no sign of the girls. They found them a week later in the river dead with bullet wounds in their heads. It devastated the town when it happened but I feel like it got covered up quickly so it wouldn't scare off any tourists. They made a small memorial near the river for the girls, and it's been vandalized beyond repair twice now. In the other town I lived in, the mayor's wife killed an elderly couple on Christmas Eve while driving drunk. She never did any time. Completely swept under the rug, but he didn't get re-elected thankfully.
One day I see a bunny. But like a huge bunny. I thought it was normal sized but as I got closer I realized I was wrong. Thing was an absolute unit. Like medium-sized dog. As time went on I would occasionally see more and more of these gigantic mutated rabbits. So turns out this guy had a couple of pet giant rabbits and then moved out to college. The official story his parents gave him was that his beloved pet rabbits got sick like a week after he moved out and had to be put down. Dude was devastated. My guess is that the rabbits weren't put down and were instead released. Now I'm not sure if Flemish giants can interbreed with wild bunnies. But everyone swears that even the local bunny population is composed of mega bunnies. And the parents are low-key kind of hated by everyone now for being dicks to their child.
Change of tone on this one but I figured I'd share anyway. I grew up in a tiny farm town in Pa. On Christmas Eve, one of the local farmers would go to all the houses with kids and climb on the roof and walk around for a minute or two to keep our belief in Santa alive and well. It's hilarious cause he never asked, just always did it every year. It obviously wasn't talked about much so that the kids never caught on, but was truly so cute. Edit, thank you for the silver, it's my first Reddit award. So glad this is making people happy, tilde. Freshman year, my history teacher was fired 1 month into the school year because some kids found porn on his school laptop. Everyone knows.
The former principal of our school used to be a Nazi. Like a real Nazi, Hitler Jugendliche Nazi.
2 guys robbed one of those car compating places, where they mash up old vehicles into giant metal bricks. They went in at night, dropped off by their GFS to go get parts and scrap to sell I guess. They'd done it before, the owner found out and waited for them one night. Shot both in the backs of the heads. Put their bodies in a car and crushed it up. The truck didn't came to pick up the metal for a couple days so the one with their bodies sat out in the heat. The officers only found them after the GFS telling police they dropped them off there and couldn't find them again. They checked the place and found them from the smell. I remember before the 2 guys were found, Missing posters of them were all over the town. Young local lawyer is kidnapped in the middle of the night at gunpoint and ordered to tie up her husband. There is a man in jail for the kidnapping, but she has never been found. Happened in the early 90s, and the theory is she was killed to cover up corruption in the court system. She was supposedly going to the DA about some shady shit.
That some of the large apartment blocks built in the last 15 years are either unsafe or illegal. It came out a few years back that a member of our local government in charge of checking building regulations was frequently sleeping with and accepting bribes from all the major building companies. She then fled out of state and all the other party members had to clean up after her. Back then way less people had moved down here, so no one really took any notice outside of the local news outlets, but I still think about all the building built too close to each other or how some are still being found to be unsafe. There's a formerly respected lawyer in my hometown that's been practicing since the 70s and has been involved in a sex trafficking circle for decades. My town has a big drug and poverty problem, so when women who were in trouble for drugs would come to him as clients, he would offer them drugs or lenient sentences because of his legal connections in exchange for prostitution. The worst part is that police, judges, parole officers and other respected men in the community not only knew or at least suspected what he was doing, but many of them took part in it. So the women could never turn to local law enforcement because of the corruption. An article was published last year that went viral in my hometown, but as far as I know, the lawyer is still being investigated.
There is a family in my hometown that nobody talks to. My grandpa has a small bar and doesn't allow them in. The reason is because the children are all product of incest. The two parents are brother and sister. Then she had a baby with her dad. They had multiple children, and when they got older they had children with their children. It's fucking disgusting.
There's someone who has been killing people in my town and their bodies have been found, around the same time every year in a large lake. Nobody talks about it, but people are being kidnapped, beaten, tortured and murdered by this sicko. It's insane.
This guy built armor around his bulldozer and ran it through town, damaging several buildings because he was mad at the local government. It's nicknamed the Killdozer if you want to look it up. The locals are sick of giving that guy's story the time of day. Edit, https://n.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Marvin_Hemiair.
My town's pretty small. One of the middle school teachers fucked a high school student. His dad works at the high school and didn't show up for a month after his son got arrested. Nobody talks about it, but everybody knows.
There's a pretty influential guy in town who works for a pretty big local company, and his wife committed suicide a few years back. We also have another pretty big wig, and he broke up with his missus because she caught him having sex with a man. One of the managers of a pretty big local hotel is a cross-dresser. Another local hotel is owned by an elderly couple in their 60s, and the man likes to have sex with twinks. His receptionist is a 19-year-old guy who got a brand new 1 Series BMW as a Christmas gift from the hotel owner. A local village 5 miles out of town is famous for having a really high incidence of cousins marrying and children being born with webbed feet. Another local village 5 miles out of town is famous for its thriving swingers community. There's a famous family in the area who is known to have practices cannibalism during WW2 food shortages. One of the local taxi companies is a front for a drug dealing operations. They only serve people they know, and a 2-mile taxi ride with them is about $50.
There's a crazy man roaming around on his bicycle, kind of verbally bullying anyone getting too close to him and people from our small shops. Everyone learned to kind of ignore him.
A small town is where everybody knows everybody's else's business, but each week they buy the local paper to see who has been caught doing it.
Don't live there anymore, but some kid across the street from my dad killed himself the other day. Young kid like 20. Apparently he had court dates for sexual assault or something. Was just renting a room there, so there were cops there questioning all the roommates for a day or two. Probably a couple came in on call because there is like one cop around on duty unless it's a holiday or something.
Senior year of high school, first week of the new school year. It happened during lunch, and by the end of the day the entire school knew. We all wanted to talk about it, but we had to do it in whispers. But one way or another, everyone eventually knew. 2 freshmen did anal in the library.
This guy I know we call the ginger fucked an ostrich. Allegedly.
My grandfather's brother killed himself and he warned that would do it, but people ignored. The detail is that this man was the most influential politician in the city and one of the biggest in the region.
In my town it's how the local university medical center overprescribed OxyContin for everything. Then when the jig was up and 20% of the state was addicted to oxys, they pulled all prescribing of OxyContin or any other narcotics, which created a heroin vacuum. They are the reason why everyone's kids and grandmothers are overdosing on heroin, but nobody says anything because jobs. They are the biggest employer in the state.
We had a serial killer in my town. No one talks about that.
Guy I used to go to school with murdered a guy because the guy was his secret lover and was running his mouth. His family is well-connected lawyers and had it covered up to look like a hit and run. Then the little brother was driving a boat while drunk and inadvertently killed a girl. Also got away with it, and he didn't have a boating license and also wasn't tested for alcohol. Everybody knows the truth, but nobody can do anything about it. Thank God I got out years ago.
The school janitor killed his girlfriend through autoerotic asphyxiation. The high school principal cheated on his wife with the teacher. The vice principal cheated on his wife with a guidance counselor. A family that's mixed race wrote the N-word on their house claiming it was racist members from the football team. The mom actually did it to get her son into a higher grade school. One of the kids who just graduated in my class did a drive-by shooting this past Monday on another student because the kid wouldn't buy weed from him. If I remember any more good ones I'll add them on.
There was a family that took in a lot of foster kids. By all accounts a very loving mother and father. At the time they had 2 kids of their own and were fostering 3. It came out that their biological son, 18, was having sex with one of their foster sons, 13. It was as consensual as a relationship between a, 18, and 13, could be. I believe because the issues of statutory rape the family lost the ability to foster anymore. They left the town after not too long.
If you are not from around here, you do not get picked for the position. Sure, the bigger companies have figured out that this is bad policy, but the little mom-and-pop businesses would rather hire their own kids or their friends' kids. Fuck the outsiders.
There was a creep in our town everyone knew about and warned their kids about. The front door of his house had a dirty diaper taped to it. He had no kids. One day he invited 2 girls into his house to see the new kittens and he exposed himself to them. Luckily they ran out of there and nothing else happened. His house stank like shit from the outside.
There was a hostage situation where the cops killed a mentally ill man because they thought he had a weapon. He didn't. It was a standoff that lasted 2 days and everyone thinks the cops just wanted it over because of the news coverage it was getting. The whole street was barricaded off and everyone was driving up and hanging out, trying to get a glimpse of what was happening.
2 kids killed themselves in the same week and one threw himself in front of a train. There are signs everywhere that say don't give up but nothing else. It's sad but everyone knows about it but we don't say anything about it. The adults don't even mention their names if the topic ends up coming up.
I come from a small Midwestern town in the middle of nowhere and people keep disappearing. It started when I was pretty young, 5-6, not really sure on the specifics, but I do remember noticing a teacher went missing. Being 5-6 we all assumed she moved till I overheard my mother and dad talking about how no one knew where she went. Fast forward a few years, the local general store owner vanished, then a pair of hunters, then a few kids from a grade up. I've never seen a newspaper article or a police report on any of them, not even missing persons report. No one seems to talk about it but we all know it's happening.
Kip from Kip's Tacos murdered his wife and put parts of her in the taco meat.
There's a medical group in my town that has slowly bought all the other hospitals in the area and closed critical locations in other smaller towns to require that they be flown via helicopter to my town for treatment. They also run their own insurance company. They have lobbied for law changes to prevent them from being ruled a monopoly, and lobbied city governments to make it criminal to protest them, and most recently, their CEO was placed on a board governing charter schools. In private, people hate them and want them gone, but the people with money and power believe that this organization is going to improve our area. People are dying, being mistreated, and shamed for seeking medical treatment. Our area is deteriorating rapidly. There are more addicts and criminals now because it's harder to find employment outside of the medical conglomerate and/or find affordable healthcare in my area now. Please send help.
Our sheriff would find kids smoking pot in the park, me included, and take our weed and tell us he was gonna throw it away, but he smoked it in his cruiser all the time. Good old Chief Moody.
The bullying is so bad at the schools that there was a suicide epidemic a few years ago. Even teachers were involved in bullying students. My friend's 9-year-old stepsister is currently being bullied and the school looks the other way. Her parents are considering having her switch schools because nothing else has worked.
Got a place about 15 miles away from where I live that's famous for incest. Skeptical
that we had a school shooting 3 years before Columbine happened.
How a bunch of kids from school got together when 2 of them stabbed the third because of a dispute. Afterwards they burned him, supposedly, alive to destroy evidence.
Oh man, do I have a few. My favorite is when the high school principal's husband got arrested for heroin possession, and the principal in the end got charged with possession and prostitution along with her husband. So apparently they found something else whilst looking around. After a brief hiatus, she was back seemingly without a record. The superintendent was rumored to have pulled some strings to get the principal's charge dismissed. It was pretty awesome seeing my principal come back and act as if nothing happened, but we all knew.
Unabomber is from my town.
A church had opened a private school, which had been running along fine for about 25 years. Sometime in the late 90s I think, the administrator was getting a little too power-hungry and too corrupt and was asked to resign after being told several times that was overstepping her boundaries. She left at the end of the school year, but had told as many parents and potential families as she could that the school was closing after the year, and that she was opening another one. She had the office phones forwarded to her own phone, started enrolling students in a new school, and one day drove a U-Haul truck to the building in the middle of the night and stole pretty much everything that wasn't bolted down to the floor. Anyone who attended the school while she worked there will still say she was insane. But no one else ever wants to talk about it. Edited to fix a spelling mistake.
The latest one? We have a pretty big white supremacist community in the area. The son of the guy in charge is a lawyer. A lawyer who has demonstrated numerous times that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. At least as far as that particular ideology goes. Rumor has it that the lawyer is having marital problems because he's cheating on his wife with his legal assistant. His assistant is a dude. It's caused quite a stir.
Everyone talks about when Larry had sex with Casey the night before she was supposed to marry Calvin. No one talks about the fact that she slept with every other guy in town leading up to that. She was 23 and slept with everyone from 18-year-olds straight out of high school to her friends' dads. But Larry is the asshole because she used that specific time to get out of the wedding, even though she had a kid with Calvin. 7 years later Calvin and Casey have 2 more kids and still live together.
The son of a well-known and well-liked figure in the community roofied a girl in high school. She developed a drug habit because of it. Her brother tried to kill the guy and was convicted of attempted murder. The roofier still accompanies his dad to community events and is currently in grad school.
My old math teacher from freshman year apparently had a relationship with a student to the point where she wanted to kill herself. He ended up dying of a brain tumor after he was convicted. It was nowhere in the news that he died. No one wanted to remember him. Fucked up thing was I moved away sophomore year and I still have emails he sent me. They weren't sexual but overly nice when I was no longer living there. A couple years prior my history teacher put his hands in a girl's pants to get her phone and was just a huge creep. would change his clothes in the classroom in front of us and ask the girls in low-cut shirts to sit up front so he could look. Town of perverts.
My town had an infant go missing, allegedly abducted by the father. The sheriff arrested him, but he swore he had no idea where the baby was. They searched and searched and searched all over the country for months, but never found it. They eventually charged the father with murder, and despite the fact that there really wasn't any evidence, he was sentenced. He spent 5 years in prison and finally admitted to killing the baby, but wouldn't tell investigators where the body was. He committed suicide in prison a short time ago. Meanwhile, the mother has had several more children, and each has been taken away by the state for neglect or abuse. She's currently under investigation for breaking her 11-month-old's collarbone. Everyone in town knows she did it, but no one is willing to say it out loud.
My high school's big sport was basketball, and naturally the varsity players got away with all sorts of stuff. The star player and his GF had sex in the library, which has floor-to-ceiling windows on 2 sides. A group of players were caught with a massive tote full of drug paraphernalia in the ceiling tiles. 2 players dined and dashed with a $200+ bill at a restaurant that a teacher and her cop husband were at. The husband called his buddies and they were fined. Their punishment? Not being starters for the next few games, which just meant being subbed in the first 30s of the game. My art teacher is married to another teacher from another school. They were trying to adopt their foster child, but apparently his wife was having sex with the 15-year-old. My teacher only found out because he put up nanny cams in the child's room and caught them. She's still in prison. The fact that our previous mayor was alcoholic and had some serious corruption cases involving drug and bets money. Moreover, he was a pediatrician, and after that he has continued with that job, and no one wants their child to be treated by the corrupt, alcoholic asshole.
It isn't all that well known actually, and the small town I live in is part of the DC suburbs, so it doesn't really count all that much. That having been said, the South Vietnamese major in this famous photo https://2.b/zy6x5w98 lived in my town for a long time. He ran a little pizza shop near my house. I used to stop in there and get a slice and a soda every now and then. Very nice guy. Some people found out it was him and he left town after being harassed. It was a shame. If you know the full story, it is understandable why he shot the guy.
Remember that clown epidemic thing a few years ago? We still hear about clowns seen briefly in town and gone again. The reason nobody likes talking about it is that whoever does seems to have accident of sorts or well just disappear.
I moved to a place about the same size as my hometown, a bit further south. Like an hour. Marriage don't mean shit. Everyone's fucking each other's wives. And people still get upset. Like, oh wow, you kicked her out 'cause she was fucking someone else while you were out? Well, the only reason that woman you were fucking had a free house is her husband was at your house. If you're gonna live like this, at least be a grown-up about it, you fucking psychos.
Cop killed the guy. They were fighting over a girl. No investigation was ever done into the killing. The police department just transferred some people away in order to divert attention. To this day, you still see flyers put up by the victim's mom asking for information. It's a small town, everyone knows everyone, so everyone knows what happened.
Where I used to live, it was known fact that colored people of any kind were not taken kindly to. One time an African American man came into town and had to get escorted out by the sheriff, and all the sheriff said is don't come back basically. Also, there are a lot of meth heads, and apparently one story of a pedophile.
Small village in England. All sorts of weird stuff happens. First, there was the traffic accident where the 2 leads in the local production of Romeo and Juliet were decapitated. Next, the local land baron was frying food after a night out drinking, left the gas on, and his entire house exploded. It was an ungodly house anyway. It definitely didn't fit with the village's rustic aesthetic. That's just the start of it. The local newspaper reporter was accidentally killed when a piece of the crumbling church rooftop fell on his head. Then the village florist was killed when she tripped and fell on her garden shears. Some people think there is more going on, but I think it's just a series of unfortunate accidents.
This has been one of the best threads I have read in a while, thanks.
I don't live in a small town, but it's definitely one that when people ask where I'm from I usually get a "where's that?" Anyways, there was one Christmas Eve where my mom was up late in the living room wrapping some gifts when all these emergency vehicles came speeding down our street. Cop cars, ambulances, paramedics, you name it. She thought it was weird as we usually never have anything too extreme happen here. We see an ambulance or cop car on occasion, but it's pretty rare. She ended up going to bed and we found out the next morning that some guy down the street from us crashed his ex-wife's Christmas party and, not only shot 9 people, but set the house on fire with a homemade flamethrower before killing himself. It was on a ton of news sites, you can probably find it if you look it up, but it has rarely come up ever since.
Fancy lawyer wanted to buy some large piece of land. The owner didn't want to sell, so the lawyer hired a guy fresh out of prison to kill the owner. The would-be hitman took the money and then went straight to the police and told them everything. Lawyer currently in prison.
I've moved out, but I still get the latest news. The high school English teacher had an obsession with animals. He would assign a lot of books that involved people turning into animals or vice versa and gave a lot of writing assignments. Eventually, he told a girl in his that he was a furry and tried to get her to have sex with him. The administration didn't do anything and he did end up fucking one of his students who was really into horses. A classmate was injured in an accident when he was in high school, and started using opiates and later overdosed in his mid-20s. They ended up painting an anti-drug mural with his face in the cafeteria at the school. What no one talks about is how he was selling drugs and was a pathological liar and all-around dirtbag before his accident. Nope, he was just another victim of prescription opiates. Bullshit.
One of our substitute teachers raped an adult student. That faded fast. A high school kid was murdered. Taken from our town, shot, had sawed halfway off and left on a toilet in a basement until he was taken to the next state over where the perpetrators burned his body and abandoned it in a field. Absolutely awful and eerie story, especially when it happened in a place near to you. Have the link if anyone wants to read the article for themselves. A man in my mother's hometown raped a mentally disabled girl. She was a minor, I believe, for years, and everyone found out a few years ago. He isn't in jail or anything BC of the lack of evidence and the family being conservative. Nobody told me how they found out, but I suspect that the girl got pregnant and the word got around.
I'm late to this, but my town had a huge rape scandal a couple decades back. 5 guys ended up raping a woman at a restaurant that one of them owned. Pretty sure all 5 guys are still very influential business owners in this town, and the woman was run out of town. Everybody acts like they don't know because the businesses are nearly unavoidable. The group of men even have their own nickname after the restaurant that I won't say, but it's definitely well known here.
Son of a powerful and very influential lawyer smashed his car into a parked vehicle outside a school just after bell, missing a group of kids by inches. Not only he was going very fast, he was also drunk and high on cocaine. Struggled against the paramedics who fished him out of the wreck because he didn't want to get his blood checked at the hospital. Didn't even get mentioned on the local newspaper. BTW, the kind of newspaper whose first page news is rainy season is coming again.
I live in Joliet, Illinois, and you may have heard about all the shooting. But anyway, one thing no one talks about is how useless the police are around here. They haven't caught any real criminals, no shooters, no gangbangers, nothing. Yet they're going around ticketing people for having tarps over their cars when it's 10 outside.
Medford, or, maybe not that small, but I had a teacher and several friends who knew the 7-year-old boy, Kyron Horman, who disappeared back in 2010. The general consensus of basically everyone is that the stepmom did it. During the investigation it came out that the stepmom had hired a hitman on the Kyron's biological dad a few months prior. So everybody believed, and still does, that the stepmom did it. Unfortunately, there is absolutely no proof to confirm this, and Kyron is still missing. It made national headlines for a bit. Kyron Horman https://www.reddit.com/r/unresolved mysteries/comments/96k7lj/kyron_horman_unresolved_source equals _medium equals _content equals post_body.
I live on an island. We have a big problem with people getting cancer that were born here and moved away or that lived here all their lives. I mean, at least 50% of my street is infected by it. They're building a new block of houses behind my house. My dad told me there used to be a car scrapyard there. So the mayor made them test the ground for any toxic chemicals. Tests came back. Mayor told them they couldn't build there because the toxins were too high. The company told the mayor they would clean the ground. A week or so later they dug up a meter of ground from the construction ground and put clean ground over it. And all of a sudden the ground was clean and they could build there. So if you ever wonder why people get so much cancer nowadays. Sorry for the bad English.
Thank you for watching. We publish amazing Reddit stories every day. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe to keep the dog smiling.